Hello and welcome back to the Celtic Way. Grand Old Team, episode 6. Yes, we're back. Statler and Waldorf, Batman and Robin, Morecambe and Unwise. You name us what you like. Little and large, who cares? We're back anyway. I'm Tony Haggerty, at Haggerty10 on the Twitter handle or the X handle. And I'm joined, as always, by the wonderful Kevin McKenna. And tonight we're going to talk about the greatest Celtic goals of all time. But we're kind of disclaimer saying it's the greatest Celtic goals of all time, according to myself and Kevin, or it's our favourite Celtic goals of all time kind of thing, because we know everybody's own choices will be different from ours, but we'll maybe jog some memories along the way and have good fun along the way. Kevin, how are you? I know this was one that you were particularly keen to do, so I'm quite keen to hear your choices and your shouts.
I mean, when we're talking about the greatest Celtic goals of all time, it's highly subjective. According to me, I always think like the last 3 goals you score against Rangers.
Yes, they can make the cut. Unlike Odin Thiago home in the Champions League squad, they'll make the cut though. The last 3 goals against Rangers.
I remember reading a book that Sir Robert Kelly, the legendary old Celtic chairman, wrote, just called Celtic, not long before he died, 1970 or something. And I think he devoted a whole chapter to a goal that Patsy Gallagher scored in the 1925 Scottish Cup final against Dundee. And there weren't any photographs, or there weren't usually photographs of football matches, so the cartoonists would have a go at drawing what happened, and so Sir Robert Kelly was at the game, and this was generally regarded as the greatest goal ever scored, because apparently Patsy Gallagher, who was playing against a very tough Dundee side, catches the ball between his legs and then sort of roly-polies with the ball between his legs, between his ankles, right through the defence, and then gets up and strokes it into the net. And there's actually a depiction of this in 4 or 5 kind of drawn frames. So it's always something that's that has mesmerised people of an older generation. I mean, I was going to write a list of 1 to 10, but to be honest, kind of pointless doing that, because there are ones that, for various reasons, not all to do with the kind of aesthetics, that to me will always be great. So, like right up there at the top for me is Murdo MacLeod's screamer against Rangers in the 4-2 game, and it was a cracking goal, but it was extra special to me because it was my first ever game, Celtic against Rangers, and it was a league decider, and there haven't been that many league deciders against Rangers, and the kind of feeling of joy and elation as a 15-year-old was incredible. And so it's probably not the best, but it was just special to me.
I'm going down a similar road, because my first pick is Paul McGugan's header, New Year game in 85. 2-0 game, yeah. There's no footage of it, and that was the first ever goal that I witnessed against Rangers. And I'm not saying it's the greatest Celtic goal of all time, but it means a lot to me because it was the first goal as a 12-year-old kid I saw against Rangers. That was my first ever experience of a derby game, and it remains, I would say my top 10, but it remains at high up my list of greatest Celtic goals of all time to me, because it was the first one I ever witnessed against Rangers. So, and it might seem a strange choice or a left field choice, but everybody will have them, won't they? And to follow up from that, Davy Provan and Frank McGarvey's goals in the 1985 Scottish Cup final, because that was the first Scottish Cup final I was ever at. So those goals, and I mentioned it on the pod this morning, following enough, because there was just that, and you'll know this, well-rehearsed ad-libs from commentators, and Province placed the ball down And it is just you flick in your mind and you're just like, cue Archie, and then Archie comes in with these goals. Only twice before in the history of the Scottish Cup final of goals being scored direct from a free kick. Is this a little bit of history? Proven bangs into the toe. It is. It's Proven, and it's just ingrained in your mind.
Yeah, and I was there. I was
your tune as a 12-year-old kid. Utter bedlam. I'd never witnessed anything like it. Even when Paul McGugan scored and Brian McClure scored in that Celtic Rangers game, I was up the Celtic end and it was joyous and it was great, but it was nothing like that cup final. Because that was pay at the gate, and I think, I don't know why it was pay at the gate, because there was an almighty crush before it, and those who were caught in it, were lucky there, but by the grace of God and all that, because I remember being a bit frightened by that, and those who were there will tell you it was difficult to get in because lots of Celtic supporters turned up, obviously. But so that cup final, those 2 goals, and McGarvey's header as well, just
McGarvey's header makes it into my top 10.
He threw himself at it from nowhere.
I know.
It's just an aimless. Well, it's a ball into the box, right? You can kind of see he was trying to pick him out, and McGarvey just flew in like an exorcist.
I've never seen a goal quite like it. I can't think of a goal that resembles it.
No.
There's been diving headers, but this one was special because he's just the ball's travelling at a rate, because Big Roy's won the ball and he's fired in at a rate of knots, and wee Frankie just throws himself at it. It was very brave, but the timing, just the opportunism, because Frank McGarvey was just a fantastic striker.
Yeah.
People who didn't see him missed a treat, because he just worked his socks off. And I remember Willie Miller saying that McGarvey was this was Willie Miller, the captain and stopper of the greatest Aberdeen team ever, said his toughest ever opponent was Frank McGarvey, because he said, look, Frankie sometimes didn't know where he was going when the ball was his feet. So he said, what chance did we have?
You mentioned Patsy Gallagher's goal, and I've read about that, and it's in the kind of folklore of Celtic. We spoke about Charlie Tully and the corner. The corner, the Brockville. I'd love to have been there for that. And obviously, older people who were there will tell you the 2 goals in Lisbon. There's never been 2 greater Celtic goals, and I'm bowing to that. And I'm going to give Tommy Gilmour's goal was probably every Celtic supporter's favourite or greatest goal of all time, and it is because what happens after that just takes Celtic onto a different level and a stratosphere that the club are still enjoying and celebrating. So those 2 goals, you would argue, are the 2 greatest goals in Celtic's history. Chalmers as well, even though aesthetically it's maybe not the greatest goal, but it is the greatest goal because it's a winner in the European Cup final for Celtic. So I'm bound to that. And obviously, I caught the tail end of Kenny Dalglish's career, so I saw some Kenny Dalglish goals, but I can't pick them out in terms of saying that was a stormer, that was a belter. But he scored loads of goals for Celtic. So I would bow to your knowledge on any Kenny Dalglish goals. He was more but if any of them made the cut, that is you were.
The thing. So in no particular order. Classic match era defining goals, ones that really meant something. In relatively recent years, Nakamura's free kick against Manchester United, which I would say is probably the greatest free kick I've ever seen. And there's been I've seen Messi scoring loads, obviously. Big Ronaldo scored a right few. David Beckham, obviously. But there was something. I mean, that ball Edwin van der Sar in the Man United goals about 6'5", and he threw himself full length. I mean, it was a gargantuan leap that Edwin van der Sar makes, if you see it.
Yeah.
And there was only one little part of the goal that that was going to elude him, and Nakamura found it, and it was, I mean, he hammered it, but at the same time he got the dip, the swerve.
Yeah, accuracy on it.
It was a sensational goal, and
it was an incredible goal, yeah.
And it was greeted, like, again, it was just thunderous. And then, there's I'm also very fond of George McCluskey's winning goal in the 1980 Scottish Cup final, extra time, not a great game. It's a bit of a, it's a Danny McGrain, usual Danny shot that's heading for the corner flag. Actually, that's not fair. You've got Lubo Moravcik's first goal in the 3-0 game at Ibrox.
Yeah.
2001. You've got Henrik Larsson's chip after taking out 3 Rangers defenders in the 6-2 game. I'm also thinking about, again, if you're looking at aesthetics, the thing with Kenny is that Kenny Dalglish scored dozens of goals for Celtic that were just works of art.
Yeah.
Where he's bringing the ball down amidst a kind of phalanx of opposition players, and he's just killed it. Yeah. And then from a standing start, and this was his classic, right? He did this classic pose where he brings it down, kills it. There's 3 or 4 defenders thinking, what's he going to do next? And he'll kind of half hit it, half chip it from the edge of the box from a standing start.
Yeah.
And I saw him score 2 goals against Motherwell, I think, at Parkhead.
Yeah, I've seen those ones. Yeah.
You'll have seen them, but there was also there was a classic goal he scored against Dundee at Dens Park, which there's footage of, 74 or 75. I think we did we win 6-0 in that game? But a gorgeous goal, gorgeous, just classic Kenny Dalglish.
There's also one that they show as well. I think Celtic are playing FC Basel.
That's right.
And it's a stormer.
Yeah. It's that one when
sticks out his foot, and it's like the next thing the top corner's bulging.
Yeah.
Like, how did he do that?
Yeah.
And these, as you say, they're works of art, aren't they? Some of these goals, and Charlie, for me, that goal at Ibrox, when he swerves it past Jim Stewart.
Oh God, yeah.
And I'd waited years to see a Charlie Nicholas goal at Ibrox, and he scored in the 90s, a volley, which was just as good as any he'd buried against Rangers. It was just a real fallow time for Celtic, but I loved that goal because it's something I'd always wanted to see. I'd always wanted to see a Charlie goal at Ibrox, and he thumped a volley home in a 2-0 win. Creaney get the other one, Jerry Creaney. And I was so delighted. It just shows you how bad Celtic were. That win meant a lot to me just because I saw Charlie score at Ibrox, and there was few crumbs of comfort during that time, Kevin. So I guess you cling on to anything. But you mentioned a lot of goals there. Larsson's chip's just a thing of absolute beauty, but you could pick any. 242 of them, Kevin, Henrik Larsson scored. So I think most people that would be their favourite, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It would also be George Cadet's first goal against Aberdeen that broke the Radio 5 live speakers because of the noise. Paolo Di Canio's Golden Boots goal, kind of bring that up to stuff like that. Yeah. Jan Venegur's header against Rangers in the dying embers of that game, that kind of header where Celtic had to win the back-to-back derby matches. So there's so many in the Rolodex of your head that they just swirl, and you can't help but smile when you think about them because you can feel your heart pounding out your chest, going like, yes, at that kind of moment. Tom Rodgick's goal Invincible.
Oh, that's in there. 2017.
As a moment in time and an achievement in Scottish football history, when you go the whole season and you do not lose a domestic football match, it's utterly incredible. And it's arguably not Tom Royce's best goal that season, because he scored a few absolute stunners.
Oh, there was that one at Rugby Park in the last minute. I mean, again, he's 30 yards out. And if there hadn't been a net, that was ending up in Girvan. That ball.
And and there was Nakamura's free kick at Kilmarnock as well to win the title. Stuff like that. But I mean, you go through all the eras that you enjoy. I mean, for what it meant, Henrik Larsson's against Boavista, the untidiest goal you'll ever see in your puff. But it makes the cut because of what it actually meant.
Yep.
Prior to that, John Hartson's at Anfield. I mean, just utter delirium. I was in America covering the Claymores, Scottish Claymores for the Daily Record at that point, and we were in the Florida Celtic Supporters Club. And when John Hartson screamed that one into the net, I just ran down the club we were in. And I phoned my dad and I said to him, "We're going to reach the final. Do you want to go?" And he said, "Nah." He said, "Nah, we'll just hang fire on that kind of talk." And then when Larsson scored in the semi-final, I had gone to the bookmakers to place a bet in Celtic, and the odds were too short. So there was a thing called the Daily Lottery, and I banged down 5 numbers at 7,500 to 1, 27, 7, 10 to 3. That was when my niece was born, first niece. Ran back to the Daily Record office, phoned the number where you would get the Daily Lottery numbers, and there was a number, and then it went 27, 7, 10 to 3, and I had to write it down 10 times, and I handed it to my colleague Colin Duncan at the time. I said, "Colin, I'm going to write down these numbers." This is lady will speak on the phone. I said, "Yeah." And so she spoke the numbers and he wrote them down. I went, "Does that match that?" And he went, "You've just won 15 grand. I says, "I think I have." So Larsson scores that goal, and I said to my dad, "Do you want to go?" And he was like, he says, "I'll not be able to afford it." And I'm like, "I can."
Yeah, I didn't know that.
And the two of us were just in tears on the floor in the living room, and he was just like, "You're kidding." I was like, "We have to go. We have to be there," and just like one of those great moments in sport. And again, the scruffiest goal of all time, but for what it meant, and just I never ever thought I would see Celtic European final, and it was great to go with my father and my brother. And
actually, my dad, who'd been at Lisbon, he'd been diagnosed with cancer a couple of years before Seville. So we at that point he wasn't too bad, but we all knew without ever having to be said that he would never ever see Celtic in another final. So we all I couldn't go because I was deputy editor of the Herald, and I just couldn't really justify just taking a couple of days off to follow the tick, because that was going to be a big story in sport and in the front of the book, news. Anyway, so we managed to get a ticket for my dad. We didn't tell him, and we told my mum. So the flights were booked without him knowing, and there was a taxi dispatched to the house, and my mother had packed his bag unknown to him, and he opens the door, taxi for Joe McKenna, and he said, "No, I didn't book one." And my mum says, "No, the boys have booked it. It's going to Glasgow Airport. They're going to meet you there, and then you're going to Seville."
Oh, brilliant!
So they just took him over. Well, so I paid for it, chipped in, but
brilliant.
And he died a couple of years later, but he got to see two of the greatest goals. Because that's the other thing, the two headers by Larsson are just classic headers.
I was saying the other day, if ever a goal was microcosmic of somebody's career, it's that Dyson Maeda one that Tavernier smashes off him. Microcosmic of two players' careers. But I think those two headers in the UEFA Cup final are microcosmic of Larsson's career. Just everything that was wonderful and brilliant about him, and he single-handedly dragged Celtic back into that contest. And and it's that horrible footage when he holds up the silver medal and says, "I didn't come here for this," and it's just heartbreaking. Makes you want to burst into tears. And also, I spoke last week or a couple of weeks ago to Brian McClare, and I happened to mention to him, and I'm glad he still likes him too. But I said he scored two of the best goals I've seen in cup finals, and they've been airbrushed in history because they lost.
The Rangers League Cup final.
Two of them.
Belter.
83, the one that Tommy Burns dinks over. It's a brilliant set-piece free kick, and it deserves more attention. And then the one he scored to make it one each in 86.
86.
And I mean, he just screams it. And I mean, like, Chris was just like, off.
He scored some crack. He had a good scoring record against Rangers.
Yeah, and he scored a great goal against Sporting Lisbon, and he scored a goal of the season against Dundee United where he just took it from his own half and just kept walking, and then thought, snuff it. I'll bury this in the bottom corner, So, but he was saying, he still they retained a lot of affection in his heart, despite the fact that Celtic lost the finals. He said we still got there, and we still, and it meant a lot at the time. And it did. It meant a lot of that. I maintain they're still two of the best goals I've seen. And Celtic were unlucky to lose both matches, obviously, but a good goal's a good goal. Kevin, a great goal's a great goal,
There was also my first Scottish Cup final in 1972. We beat Hibs 6-1. Dixie Dean's second, I think, where he gets the ball almost perpendicular to the goal. He's wide on the left. He's been pushed out, and you've still got 3 or 4 Hibs players and the goalkeeper, and he just kind of catches it. And you're thinking, he needs to hit it now. No, he cuts inside, right? He needs to hit it now, and he cuts back, and you're going, but the ball's still tied to his foot, and then he just slips it past, I think, Jim Herriot. And that there was an explosion of joy with that one because 10 days previously he'd missed the crucial penalty against Inter Milan in the European Cup semi-final.
I mean, and one that springs to my mind as well, and what a player he was, Paul McStay, but that goal against Rangers at Ibrox in 88.
Absolutely.
The season. And it tell you how Jock Brown was commentating, but Sir Alex Ferguson was summarising. There you go. And if you watch the playback in that, Sir Alex Ferguson just says, "What a marvellous hit." Yes. A marvellous hit. Marvellous. It's just like, and it's an absolute screamer. And Paul McStay scored a lot of brilliant goals for Celtic.
That was the game. I remember going to that game Sunday.
Yeah.
And although Celtic had a fairly healthy lead over Rangers, it was their centenary season, of course. There was a feeling that, if Rangers won this, they could mount a challenge. So there was a feeling that Celtic win that, the league's, we won the league, and it was a hard game.
Yeah.
A really, really hard game. Rangers had this Danish striker or midfielder called Jan Bartram.
He scored the equaliser.
And it was a belter of a goal. But McStay was absolutely outstanding that season, and he won rightfully the Football Writers Player of the Year award in '88. But he was never more outstanding than in that game because it's at Ibrox, it's nip and tuck, it's a. There was no quarter asked or given. It was a cracking game, as I recall.
Yeah.
And the goal just just topped it. Paul scored quite a few really good goals against Rangers.
He did, yeah.
Starting, and I think it was 82, 83, a 3-2 game at Parkhead in the rain.
Yeah.
And again, he was just
the one that looked over, yeah.
He was another player who, I suppose, in the early years of his career, he won plenty of trophies, but when he became captain, that Celtic team just was playing catch up against the kind of artificially constructed Rangers team at the time. With the.
I mean, and his sidekick at that time, his sidekick midfield, John Collins, he produced two of the best free kicks I've seen with the Predator boots, top corner, bottom corner, you know what I mean? Just take a pick. And I just felt that those two deserved more, And I love John Collins for the very fact that he could have signed for Rangers, but he chose not to because they offered him a lot more money and he just couldn't bring it within himself to do that, he said. And I've always admired him for that because it was the easiest thing to do at that time, to join a club who were successful and rampant, both domestically and taking scalps in Europe as well. But he's heartily at Celtic Park and he wanted to play for Celtic, and during a time when it was as lean as it gets. And I've always admired John for that. And I loved him as a player. I just thought he was elegant and silky, and those two free kicks, I'm always kind of like, yep, yeah. Not for the want of trying, John. You needed players around you. Like Paul, you had Paul McStay beside you, but you needed players of that ilk to mount that challenge, and Celtic just sadly couldn't mount a challenge to Rangers at that moment in time. But no, yeah, I totally agree. And just depends. You talk about errors and certain players and stuff and goals, but this is a never-ending conversation, isn't it? You're just plucking goals right, left, and not all of them against Rangers, not all of them screamers. Just for what they meant. There's the spoke about the centenary season and Mark McGee's goal against Hearts in the semi-final of the Scottish. It's ebbing away. Henry drops the ball and Mark McGee squeezes it in between 9 players. It's just like an incredible feat, how he manages to get that ball in the net. And obviously Andy scores seconds later. So
the amount of goals that we scored in the last 5 minutes during that season was incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Billy Connolly did that sketch with McIlvany, didn't he? When they were standing in the jungle. And Billy Connolly said to those Celtic supporters, saying, "Hold on, there's a minute and a half to go. We'll win this." Just like, it's like, but that was what it was like that season.
And I'm thinking, I was watching Kyogo's goal against Rangers.
What one?
And from Sunday, where he passes it into the net, and I know Butland got a bit of criticism because of his positioning. However, it was like his goal against the Rangers at Ibrox. He takes it so early.
Yeah, Kevin, it's a world-class finish.
He just didn't.
You can make up your mind.
You could say Butland has left too much of the goal, but you're Butland and you're thinking he's 30 yards out and there's 4 defenders, between me and him, and he doesn't look as if he's shaping to shoot because he just takes the one touch.
Yeah.
And somebody had put together all 8 goals that he scored against Rangers. More than half of them were absolute gems.
Gems, yeah.
They're classics. So there was that one. The one against Rangers at Ibrox, the one that you see from the low-level camera.
Yeah.
The way, see when he strikes it, both of his feet are off the ground.
Yeah.
They're about 6 inches off the ground. He's hit it as sweetly as anybody could. And again, just hearing the kind of echo of the stanchion being hit because of the silence is just lovely.
Well, there was silence apart from me in the press box saying, "What a goal that is!" forgetting where I was. You know what I mean? So,
and then there was the one. There was the one in the 3-2 game, Parkhead, where he swivels. You know, he swivels almost 360 degrees.
Yeah.
The wee fella has scored some classic goals.
Yeah.
He's such a clean finisher.
Yeah. And of the common bunch, there was that. I think it was Ferencváros when Jota played that brilliant pass.
Oh God, that! Jota just smacks it, doesn't he?
Sublime pass. Yeah, because I think it won the goal of the.
It won the goal of the round.
The round, didn't it? And then when you're talking about Jota's dink over. I think it was
beautiful.
Was it just brilliant? You know, if you're bringing it bang up to date. But I mean, as I say, we're talking about the greatest Celtic goals of all time, but I guess we're just kind of our favourite Celtic goals and what they meant, you know, and it pains people to say this, Kevin, but a certain number 9 scored a belter at Love Street when Celtic won the title in '86, and lots of people won't want to say his name, but you can't deny.
I'll say it. Morris Johnson.
Yeah.
I forgave him long ago. Celtic were as much to blame for that situation as anybody else.
And it's still a brilliantly worked goal.
Morris Johnson scored some marvellous goals for us.
He did. He scored some cracking goals, yep. I agree with that. But that goal in particular, Love Street '86, the lime green shirts, it's just synonymous with that day.
I had turned up
football goal.
I was getting married in the following month, and we had just bought our first flat in Govan Hill, and nobody thought, we had a rat's chance because Hearts hadn't been beaten almost all season, and all they had to do was avoid defeat against Dundee. So I was supposed to be doing up, kind of painting the flat. And my pal Billy said, come, we'll just pop over to Love Street. Didn't need tickets, of course.
Mm.
And I thought, to hell, we'll just go, we've been at most of the games. We'll just finish off the journey. Celtic had won their previous 7 games in a row. And what a special. I mean, again, most of the goals in that 5-0 drubbing were classics.
Mm.
They were gorgeous goals. Brian McClare's. That'll always stick in my mind. And I don't, long ago forgave Morris Johnston. And I prefer to remember him scoring some brilliant goals for us, including in that game. I remember a goal that he scored against Dynamo Kiev, Parkhead.
Yeah.
At the athleticism of reaching the ball against some big, hard Russian defenders who weren't, messing about in that game. A goal against Atletico Madrid in Madrid.
Yeah.
You've just got to let the past go sometimes.
We mentioned him the other week, and only because he's a bit of a cult icon, but Johnny Doyle's against Real Madrid.
Oh,
his header's goals. Yeah, I think Arthur Mods would call it a sensational header, but as Arthur would.
Well, I remember getting. So I was at the gang. I've told the story. I was at the seminary.
Yeah.
And we had sent a begging letter to Desmond White, the old chairman, to see if he could help out 12 starving students for the priesthood who were going to Africa. To work with the poor and the marginalised. And but see, see the commentary that night. So I've seen the commentary often. You know, it's fairly common on social media, YouTube. You'll get it because Ian St John.
Yes, right. Ian St John's there.
And so it's a great goal. It's a great occasion. You know, it's the first time we played Real Madrid. We've beaten them 2-0. They're runaway favourites. We got a goal disallowed. I mean, we played above ourselves because what a team they were.
Yeah.
And we, Johnny Doyle, scored this cracking goal. And Ian St John can only say, oh, it was a great goal, but, you know, it's probably come from Celtic's least effective attack. And why do you say that? So what's the point? You know,
I remember I've seen that. Wow.
Just shut it. Say
nothing. Yeah. And then following on from that, you've got Charlie's in Amsterdam.
Oh,
you talked about. You can just clip that up and hang it in the Louvre. It's absolutely brilliant. It's like one of the best away goals I think I've ever seen.
Charlie scored some classic goals.
Of course he did. I mean, early Charlie, vintage Charlie, he was terrific.
There's a friend of mine in the office, Alan Simpson, who's the Herald news editor, massive Dons fan, you know, just mental Dons fan, and he says that the Aberdeen fans love Charlie Nicholas because a lot of it was to do with the goal that he scored, you know, the penalty kick that he took to beat us in the 1990 Scottish Cup final, knowing that he was signing for Celtic. He'd already put pen to paper, and that was his last game, and it's against the club he's going to. And, you know, he said a lot of us just thought he shouldn't be given the responsibility of taking a penalty. But, of course, he couldn't not, because it had gone to, like, almost through the entire team, both teams.
And also, Charlie was playing to get a full set of domestic medals.
Well, yeah. And I don't think there was a Celtic fan that would have begrudged them, you know. I loved Charlie. But Alan says that, you know, some of the, you know, just the skill and some of the goals that he scored, you know, for Aberdeen were great. Anyway, this is about Celtic goals, I'm not bringing in Aberdeen.
I mean, I take my dad's word for it, and I've seen some of them, obviously, but from the Lisbon Lions era, Tommy Gilmour, who just used to crack the ball from...
Well, you know what I saw during the week?
100 yards.
I'd forgotten about this. There's some decent footage of Celtic versus Zurich.
Yes.
In the first round of the 66-67 season.
Is Bob Crampsey commentating on that?
I don't know if that's a Crampsey one, but it's pretty decent quality. And Zurich, because I've read quite a few reports of that game. And we tend to think, you know, Zurich, Celtic would have been runaway favourites, but Zurich were regarded as a very good team in Europe, and they were hard. They were hard as nails.
Yeah.
And I think Celtic won 2-0 at Parkhead and 3-0 in Zurich. And they'd had their chances. But the goal by Tommy Gemmell's an absolute stormer.
Screamer, isn't it?
Yeah, because he wins the ball with a header. Out near, almost on the halfway line, out near the touchline. So, he kind of wins the ball with a header, takes out two opponents, gallops
and
about
rattles
4 or 5 yards, and then rattles it when you're thinking that he needs to actually, what's he doing hitting it from there? I mean, it was closer to 40 than 30, and he absolutely rattled it.
Leathers, hot shot Hamish stuff into it. I mean, and what Malman said that Bobby Murdoch had a shot like that as well. And, you know, there's that great Leeds goal in the semi-final at Hampden.
Yes.
Bobby scores the equaliser that night. I still think Billy Brenner's goal that night. If there's no nets there, that's travelling. that hits the net, it's a ferocious people. It's a brilliant goal. But Bobby Murdoch when he puts his two hands up and all that, but he could hit a ball. My old man told me there's that footage of that a 3-1 game at Celtic Park when Rangers had just missed a penalty and Celtic went up the park and scored, and then Bobby Murdoch made it 2-1. I think the last 10 minutes or something, and he screams 1-0. So and also Lennox had a habit of scoring against Rangers, didn't he?
Yeah,
Lennox, he got a lot of goals against Rangers, and I've seen some of those goals, and it was just always Lennox's speed that took him away from the Rangers defence, and he would just guile that would take it in the net,
There was a special goal he scored against Rangers at Ibrox in 1980. Well, let me think, 79-80. It was at the end. It was either the end of 1979 or the beginning of 1980, and we didn't know it at the time, but it was his last ever goal against Rangers.
Yeah, that's right.
One each, and I'd gone with a pal of mine from the seminary called Patrick Black, and I think we must have been allowed at the weekend home, and I'd managed to get a couple of tickets. And at that point, I know this seems hard to imagine given the kind of shenanigans we have with Rangers over tickets, but Celtic didn't just have the the Broomloan stand. We also had about a third of the enclosure and the main stand at Ibrox.
The main stand,
and I was the two tickets we had were at the Celtic part of the Rangers main stand, and I remember thinking, I mean, I was only 17 or 18, but I remember thinking, I think Rangers had getting into the lead. It wasn't a great game, but Bobby Lennox scores the equaliser, and it's crucial. I remember thinking that'll probably, we're not going to see much more of the wee fella in the hoops, because by then I think, I mean, that would have been his 20th season.
Yeah,
it was his 20th season, and he's still popping up and scoring a crucial equaliser at Ibrox against Rangers.
We spoke about it the other week as well. Joe Craig's goal against Rangers at Ibrox.
Oh,
a belter, an absolute belter.
Where Bobby Lennox got his leg broken by John Gregg.
Yes, indeed. But yeah, that one's always pops up whenever there's kind of talk about great goals and stuff like that. But I mean, yeah, I as I say that not every great goals against Rangers, we've highlighted quite a lot that aren't. I was trying to think of other European goals, and one that sprung to mind was Liam Miller's against Lyon.
Oh.
And only because David Pleat was in the commentary box and he said you will not find a better goal scored in Europe anywhere for a long time.
Yeah.
He was saying to the commentator, count the passes. He said, watch this goal. He says it's a thing of beauty.
And that was the goal that took him Manchester United.
Yeah, because he was great. He was great against Anderlecht, and then he was great against Lyon. And I just wish he'd stayed.
Oh,
God rest him, because he would have been an absolute brilliant a star for Celtic. But that goal in particular, and you always know who, Henrik Larsson flights the ball in for his for him to score with a header, but you always know the kind of end of it. But I mean, it was an incredible move. Just recycled it and pro for the opening. And Lyon were an excellent side.
Oh, we went out to Lyon. That was the season after Seville.
Yeah,
and it was a tough group. It was Bayern Munich, Anderlecht, and Lyon. So Celtic would be third favourites. Celtic were expected to be competing with Anderlecht, not to be bottom of the group. But in the end, we were 2 minutes away from qualifying, because it was 2 each. It was 2 each in Lyon, and then Bobo handled the ball for reasons only the big man will know. But over the 2 games, if you're looking at it as 2-legged, We beat them 5-4 in aggregate. And they were, only two French clubs have won a European trophy. I mean, everyone talks about the top 5 leagues in Europe, and they include France in that because of PSG and because of the money that they have. But they've got a shocking record in Europe. Marseille won the European Cup once, and Paris Saint-Germain won the Cup Winners' Cup once, and that's it. That's their whack.
Yeah.
Lyon haven't. In fact, Lyon haven't even got to a final. But that Lyon team in the early 2000s was the team, the French team, most likely, to win a European trophy, if not the Champions League itself. And Celtic were outstanding. And if you want to bring the great goals right up to date, CK Ogo's against Atletico last season.
Right.
Again, I recall, David Pleat's comment about Liam Miller. You knew you wouldn't be seeing a much better goal in Europe, across Europe that night than that goal. Just the speed with which, and it was all down to O'Reilly's vision. What a goal!
That's brilliant.
And that's what I kind of still hang on to. Although I think we got 4 points in quite a tough group, but there were aspects of our play against Lazio and Atletico and Feyenoord that made me think, we get the right players in, the right personnel, and a half decent draw, we can do something.
And another one of my favourite goals is in Europe when it's Martin O'Neill's era, and it's Chris Sutton's volley against Juventus. His header was cracking against Juventus.
Yeah.
His volley was an absolute screamer. One of the best games I've witnessed live. I just thought it was a brilliant, outstanding game. And it's arguably not the best goal in the game because Trezeguet hit one slide roll. I mean, he's fizzed it, and it's just straight like an arrow. And I just thought, what a finish that! I mean, just
what player he was.
Yeah, but Big Sutton that night, that volley, tremendous. And Chris Sutton was another one who scored some wonderful goals. The colour for the green and whitewash when they got Rangers to keep.
Well, that's in my. That would be getting into my top 10 because of the significance of it. End of the season, the league's well won, but you can't. For those that weren't there, it's hard to overestimate how important it was. How much tension there was about winning that 5. The 5 out of 5.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we had done that. I don't even think Rangers have done it.
I think Rangers managed it 63, 64. They'd won every derby game.
I did, because it also, but there was only the two. And they beat us in the Scottish Cup. Did they beat us in the League Cup as well?
I think so. I'm sure I remember, because I remember doing it to John Fallon, and that was the headline on it, green and whitewash. And I remember saying to him, you were around when Rangers did it, and he was like, yeah. So I'm sure it was 63, 64, if memory serves. But
yeah,
you say because Celtic brought out the DVD as well, wasn't it? Green and whitewash and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, that was special because me and my friend David Lowe had been to just about, I think we'd been to every game, home and away, in that 2003-2004 season. I remember it became a bit of a holy grail for us, right? We just have to be there because Celtic went on this amazing winning run. It wasn't just an unbeaten run. Like it was, I think it might still be a record for the number of consecutive victories. And at one point, I'm thinking my attendance at these games is crucial to Celtic winning. If I stop going, if I can't go to a game, something bad's going to happen. And I remember when my friend couldn't make it, and I'm getting the train, from Queen Street through to Edinburgh at 10 o'clock in the morning for an early kickoff, and it's bucketing down against Hibs, and I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing with your life? Turning up at Fir Park on a Sunday, for an early kickoff, and it's pissing down. But yeah, and I was at every one of those 5 games against Rangers. And lo and behold, right, a couple of weeks later, we're playing Motherwell Parkhead on a Sunday, and I had to go to a family christening.
Oh, wow.
And what happens? We only drew one each. That was the unbeaten record gone because I wasn't there. And we only drew one each against Motherwell at home.
and I loved Moussa Dembele's goals against Rangers. He was great. He had an uncanny knack of turning up in that fixture and doing.
He loved the
wind up as well. Yeah,
you know, he smacked that ball. You know,
without doubt. And you know, so you can pick any of Moussa Dembele's goals against Rangers. I mean, first guy to get a hat trick against them since Harry Hood, wasn't it?
Yep, 5-1.
Yeah,
opening game of Brendan Rodgers' reign.
And Harry liked a goal for Celtic as well. So
that one that we did the other week about the kind of unsung Celtic heroes.
Yeah.
Did we mention Harry Hood?
I think you might have mentioned him because you were talking about his goal he scored in the '74 Scottish, didn't you?
Yeah, because he's on the cusp, isn't he? Because he comes into the Celtic side in a couple of years after Lisbon when there's a bit of a rebuilding job done. But he, my dad's generation, they all loved Harry Hood.
Yeah.
And he had a great name. and we had a great song, you know.
Half the face is good.
and of course, it was that hat trick in midweek against Rangers in the League Cup semi-final, where it was one of those kind of, I think it was on Sports Night with Coleman. No, it would have been Sports Night because there wasn't anything else down there, and being allowed up to watch it as a 9-year-old, which is a special midweek treat. And you don't see many hat tricks. I think the one prior to that was Stevie Chalmers.
Yeah, that was
in 65 against Rangers.
Yeah, I mean that is, as I say, we couched it as the greatest Celtic goals of all time. People will throw in theirs at some point, won't they, Kevin? And they'll be vastly different from ours. But I guess meaningful goals that meant something to you and I.
Yes.
In terms of the realms of discussion. But there's that many of them. You're going to come off screen and you're going to think, oh, I wish I'd mentioned that. It's a certainty, isn't it? But trying to cram in as many as we can, basically, aren't we? But I think we've mentioned a few goals, haven't we?
I think we've got the. I suppose the only in something like this you overlook, and we're not being disparaging to clubs out with Rangers, Aberdeen, Europe, but there's been classic goals against Dundee United, Hearts, Hibs, Falkirk, and Fairmont, Motherwell. But they'll forgive us for mentioning these ones that won trophies or were the decisive games and titles, or that are at the top end of Europe.
Yeah,
but I think we've covered. I think we've mentioned most of the big ones and the meaningful ones in the last 30, 40 years. I'm sure somebody will correct us.
Sure. But in order to go back, just give a nod to all 7 goals in the 1957 League Cup final.
Certainly.
Still remains a British record in a cup final to this day. So very, very remiss of us not to mention that. And I just, with AI and all that, I just wish someone would be able to restore these games to their splendour and glory.
Well, you never know.
In the 4-2 game as well, you'd love to see that.
You never know.
If you had said it would be great if that happened, and I'd love to see that. I'd love to see the 7-1 game with decent footage.
That will happen. Eventually, we're just in the foothills of AI.
Yeah.
Eventually, over the, I would predict. I'll make a prediction. Within the next 10 years, there will be an AI tool which based on match reports, detailed match reports of big games from pre-television, if you like, they'll be able to do a fairly faithful reconstruction of those games, are the key moments. Mark my words.
I will mark your words. And on that note, we shall say cheerio, and we'll be back for the magnificent episode 7 of Grand Old Team at some point next week. We'll come up with a topic, Kevin. It's never...
I'm just thinking at some point we're going to have to look at, if I mentioned this to you, Celtic fans' thorny relationship with the media, the dreaded, hated MSM.
You did mention that to me.
I think we need to get a guest in from the MSM to help us with that one when we deconstruct this century-long.
And I think you've got somebody in mind, haven't you?
Yeah.
I think you've got somebody in mind.
I think we can persuade Graham Spears to come and address this and ask us and basically correct us. Are we just being paranoid? But anyway, that's one for the future.
That's one for the future indeed. We shall bid you a fond farewell. I hope you've enjoyed that. Not as much as it's the old Monty Python, isn't it? And if you've enjoyed it half as much as us, then we've enjoyed it twice as much as you, as Michael Phelan used to say. But we genuinely do love this hour. It's the quickest hour of the week, and myself and Kevin love going down the Celtic rabbit holes and just producing whatever comes from the top of our head. But hope you've enjoyed that trip down memory lane concerning goals. I certainly enjoyed it, and I think we've covered a lot of goals here, Kevin. But I've been Tony Haggerty, at Haggerty10 and X, or Twitter handle even. That's been Kevin McKenna. This has been a Grand Old Team episode 6, the greatest Celtic goals of all time, or certainly myself and Kevin's favourite goals of all time. But thanks very much for joining us. Appreciate it. Kevin, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Pleasure.